Gavin Newsom might have pulled off the impossible. He just went as a state representative or a governor, basically, of California. He went to one of the most hated countries by America since the Soviet Union. Yeah, China. He goes to China. How does he pull it off without getting completely roasted alive in both sense of the terms, right? How does he not get killed by the Chinese? How does he not get killed by his constituency in California? We'll see this right now.
As he wraps up his China trip, Governor Gavin Newsom sits down with us for an exclusive interview. Newsom taking us inside his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Talk about the issue of our time, climate change.
This week, we walked with Newsom as he entered China's Great Hall of the People for that Xi meeting, a surreal moment. With soldiers everywhere and trumpets blaring, we entered a massive, ornate waiting room before he was summoned to walk this lengthy red carpet to greet the president.
Okay, but you see how that works, right? It's brilliant. Because in a major way, he's able to somewhat, again, validate his own existence, right? What governor could pull that off? Do you think Ron DeSantis could ask to go to China and pull off the same sort of juncture? You really don't think so. And so this really helps Gavin Newsom run for president because he'll be able to rely on this. And assuming he can spin it towards a positive for the American people, which is going to be difficult. We'll see what he does here. But basically, if he's pressed on it and actually survives that, then this looks super cool. I mean, it's somewhat like if you were to visit Germany in 1935. Now, in hindsight, that'd be really ugly. But I mean, at the time, it could be validating to anybody running for president in 1936, we could say.
Power and exudes place, and it's intended to be what it is. Yeah, it was sort of overwhelming for any visitor. It's a home field advantage.
Newsom says Xi helped break some of the tension when recalling his 2012 visit to L.A. with then-Governor Brown, checking out a Laker game, meeting Magic Johnson, and cheering for Kobe Bryant, a frequent China visitor.
Talk about Kobe Bryant, and he talked very fondly about that visit to Los Angeles. That's a point of pride, and I also made a point, that's a point of pride for me, about the Warriors, not just the Lakers. so Xi's a Kobe fan? That's well established in this meeting. Let's just we want to make him a Curry fan.
I asked Newsom to respond to critics who say China is far away from the problems at home the California governor should be focused on.
They would rather see you at home dealing with homelessness than here in China. What do you say to those people?
I don't know that 24/7, 7 days a week, homelessness is the number 1 to number 10 issue. That's all I focus on. Taking a few days after legislative session when the entire legislature is on vacation or out of town to focus on the issues of reinvigorating these relationships, I think is a pretty good use of time.
Newsom's week went back and forth between highly scripted.
So that's the thing that you deal with, being a politician is that, and you know what, this is not a fair criticism of Gavin, to be completely honest. It's just a complete bad faith sort of thing where they're saying like, well, basically, you could be fixing this bigger issue, but it's like, I can't. The legislative session, the session ended days ago. So he takes a couple days to go to China, right? I mean, sometimes you go to Panda Express. I mean, you have fun, right? And he's just wanting to get killed and raked over the coals. And for what? This reporter, by the way, just complete nuisance, talking about how he's going to what? Solve homelessness by not going to China. So it's a bad faith question. And he in jest reiterates that energy in such a way to where he doesn't come off as pissed off, which he would be valid emotionally being in that state for, because ostensibly what he does is he goes, well, nah, actually, and then he just explains it, but with a smile on his face, which is disingenuous, but also like disarming, right? So it's part of the charisma there.
Including at the Great Wall of China, driving a Tesla, feeding cranes at a wildlife preserve, and one that didn't go as scripted. Playing basketball with kids in Beijing while in dress shoes. Newsom slipping and falling on top of a Chinese child, and then reacting like this.
I gotta work on my balance. Are you concerned, though?
So you see that could be a huge gaffe, but he actually played it off. So he's playing against a bunch of these little short kids, right? He falls on the kid. Usually a politician would probably be like, oh, and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Instead, he plays it off. And the media didn't really cover this because obviously he reacted in a way that was healthy. And he just says, okay, well, fall on this kid, touch the kid. Again, without consent, does the kid speak English? No, he doesn't give a fuck. And then you know what? That's brilliant because who cares? So there's like a little 5-year-old Chinaman, right? And he goes and he says, oh, okay. Oh, hugging the little kid. Okay. So it's cute. And so he disarms everything. You see him on the ground here. And again, this is where the common politician, again, if this were Chris Christie, first of all, he wouldn't be on the basketball court, but let alone, let's say if he were, the kid would be dead. So disregard that political experience. Okay. If you put another politician, let's say Joe Biden, I mean, he'd be on the ground, sniffing the child? I mean, that wouldn't work well. But Gavin Newsom, who's like an in-shape guy, still young enough to fall and not bitch about his ribs being broken or a hip being out of place, he goes around and he bounces back up, but he also hugs the child to reaffirm that, this is not crazy.
Reacting like this.
I gotta work on my balance. Are you concerned, though, that some of those images of you may be used as sort of propaganda by an administration that a lot of people see as repressive and communist?
It's the nature of life. You can have a closed fist or an open hand. You can turn your back. You can deny that we live on the same planet. At the end of the day, with all due respect, I don't want a new Cold War. I don't want to go to war with China. I mean, some people I think really do. I mean, that scares the hell out of me. Think about that. I mean, I mean this. We got to soften the tone and tenor here. Now, came.
It's time to head home after a long week.
All right, and so here you have somebody in Gavin who's obviously towering over Xi Jinping in the way that he also couches a sort of like political explanation as to why he's meeting with the communist dictator or whatever have you, is that, well, it's a liberal interpretation of this whole thing, right? So he says, well, open hand instead of a closed fist. And he's also pontificating over the allegation of every other politician calling for a new Cold War. And then he says, and again, he's an old white guy, so he's like, okay, well, I lived through the Cold War. That scares the hell out of me, which in a way actually shows a degree of vulnerability, but also a degree of honesty, where he probably is being disingenuous with what he's saying, but it's also couched in such a sense to where the home crowd in California would actually sympathize with the rationale he's using. And so that's somewhat brilliant, right? Because he knows what crowd he's playing towards. And if when he preaches to the choir, it actually resonates back in the church, then he's a good preacher in that respect, or singer. So he's doing a good job. And, you know, chiefly among everything, when he points back to the film in a couple of years and says, okay, well, I met with this person as a governor, whereas the person running against him, most likely, let's say Ron DeSantis, you know, this person couldn't pull it off. And, you know, you might say, well, you worked with the enemy, you met with China, but it wasn't over pretensions that China was great, but instead a pragmatism in the way that Gavin Newsom sold it, as in, well, you know what, we need to work with China because they're a pollutant. We need to work with them because we need to avert a war. That liberal sensibility actually has undertones and pangs that could work out in the Midwest come 2024, anti-war sentiment, whatever have you. Now, that is my spin cycle for Gavin Newsom. This is his sort of trip to China. What did you guys think about it? I think that overall it's an optics W because not only is the fallout going to basically happen right now in regards to like, oh, you're sleeping with the enemy, but in the future, the photo op is going to look cool. It's going to make him look presidential. It'll say like, wow, this guy actually visited this big country and was welcomed in with trumpets and horns and whatever have you, and they were bonding over the Lakers or some inane nonsense. Okay, well, that's actually just somewhat impressive. And so it'll validate him come 2024 or 28 when he runs for president, whenever he decides to. So that's kind of why I have to respect Gavin Newsom as a politician. Obviously, he sucks, but rhetorically gifted as shit. And also, this is just a brilliant move. So 4D chess, good job, Gavin.